weekend versus Lurk. We're going to get to the gameplay here in a little second, but I never thought I'd get to see the day where two completely new archetypes are Yetis have been here for a while, but let's be honest, they've never really been good. So, and Lurk's completely new. So let's just say that. I don't know, they're both good, and I've had so much fun with Yetis. Such an awesome deck. If you guys want this deck, the code will be in the description below, as well as a link to the Mobilytics deck. And as always, don't forget to like the video, hit that subscribe button. I do stuff. I'm doing more YouTube videos lately, finally, but I also cast Legends of Runeterra tournaments on a pretty much weekly basis. Going to be doing the OLS this weekend. 29 or something like that. So it's America Shard. Link will be in the description below as well if you guys want to go ahead and check out the tournament and sign up. So with that said, we're going to do this deck. We're going to go through basically what all the cards are in here for, what they do, why they're needed, and then we're going to get into the gameplay, talk about a little bit of strategy and stuff like that with actually playing the deck. But with that said, this deck at its core, mid-range Frostbite, essentially what it is, right? And honestly, it lives up to the name. Mid-range Frostbite has always been such a solid deck for so stinking long, and this deck is no different. Solid is a word. Pretty much everything in here is a 5/5, so it's definitely pretty good as far as units are concerned. So with that said, the goal of the deck, overall goal, is to basically flood the boards with Ancient Yetis, Abominable Guardians, otherwise known as a Yeti, the regular Ancient Yetis with either Tall Tales or the Trappers, or even the Yeti Yearlings that shuffle them in. So now there's a lot of different ways to go about this. Basically, the best way and the kind of the nuts draw way is this Abominable Guardian. If you do get those early on in the game, you can get them out there with a couple of Yeti Yearlings or a Yearling and then a Trapper into an Ancient Yeti. So these are so good now that these have come out. And don't forget, they do shuffle another one into your deck when you play it. So they basically don't leave. They're always around. So it's like an anti-Watcher strategy kind of as well. Unless you're playing it. You don't want to be playing it against Watcher. So, anyways. So, on top of that, we got the usual kind of mid-range Frostbite package with the freezes. You got the Brittle Steels. You got the Flash Freeze. You got the Iceveil Archers. You have the Harsh Winds. Ash is in here. I'm very much going to be trying Sejuani in here as well, but Ash, there's something to be said about her OTKs with her level 2. It's just so crazy easy in this deck to set up an OTK if she's leveled up. A little bit harder to level her up because there's not a ridiculous amount of freeze. But there is enough. Usually it takes an Iceveil Archer coming down at some point, and then you just hold a Harsh Winds later on in the game, and you're usually pretty good by then. Usually when you have a leveled Ashe on field, she's being paired with, like, I don't know, a couple Abominable Guardians, a couple Ancient Yetis, a couple what the heck is the other one? This one, Enraged Yeti. That's what I meant. A couple Enraged Yetis, a couple Ancient Yetis, and all of a sudden, all those 5/5s represent, 4 of them is 20 damage. You don't even need the Ashe attacking, but they don't have any blockers. And generally speaking, there's no good fast removal or burst removal for that matter to play against a bunch of 5/5s attacking. So your opponent really has to whittle them down slowly but surely. And there are some decks that can do that. But the other good thing with this is that generally when you have big boards like this, the consideration is Ruination, things of that nature. This deck has so many tools to play around something like Ruination because of things like the Enraged Yeti. These don't seem like a big deal, but I always said this about Stygian Onlooker. A 1-mana 5/5 is a huge tempo swing for only 1 mana. So if your opponent, if you have the attack token and you have 5 wide of 5/5s, but you have a couple Enraged Yetis in your hand, they can, they can board wipe you. It's going to feel really bad. But then you're popping down for only 2 mana, 2 Enraged Yetis, and now you're pushing 10 damage to their face. So there's a way against control decks, with this deck in particular, to kind of spread things out across turns, just like you would with an aggro deck versus control. You don't want to commit too much to the board, but this can very quickly redevelop a board if needed. Now, on top of that, because you have such cheap units like the Enraged Yetis, and you're going to be getting them to the board so quickly, you can run out of steam. Unless you have a Tri-Faron Assessor. Generally, in mid-range Frostbite, you'd be pretty happy getting 2 or 3 off of Assessor. I think a lot of people would agree that if you have 2 5+ units down and you play Assessor, if you have 2 5+ units down, you probably want to play Assessor just to get that value, that draw 2, and then she feels very, very worth it, because who knows, your opponent might remove those 2 units. 3 is kind of greeting, and then anything beyond that is just, you got lucky or got the nuts or something, right? In this deck, there's no luck or nuts about it. I mean, generally, I am almost always getting at least 3, if not 4 or 5 with Trifarian Assessor. You probably don't want to be playing Assessor unless you're getting 3 draws out of her in this deck. I mean, if you need to, you can play her for 2 draws if you're, kind of got a shit hand in the beginning of the game. But generally speaking, she's going to draw you a lot, which is why there's only 1 Whispered Words in here for now. There's also Babbling Bjerg. But, you can kind of play with these. This is kind of the draw engine in the deck. There's definitely some room to play with these a little bit. And also Tall Tales. So Tall Tales, it's good for the early game, especially if you do get an Ancient Yeti down. Yeti Yearling. Because you can kind of put the pressure on a little bit earlier than you would have otherwise. So really, this deck doesn't start to put pressure on until like turns 4 or 5 at best. And then turn 6, 7, you almost always are going to have a huge board of Yetis. If you have a Tall Tales, it's very possible, especially with 2 Abominable Guardians, to have a board full of 5/5 Yetis, by turn 3 or 4. In which case, this allows you to have the nuts a little bit more often, essentially. It's pretty easy to make sure you get it off, especially playing the 3 Yeti Yearlings. I don't know about playing 3, but it is useful for sure. And with that said, I just mentioned these. The Abominable Guardian, this is why this deck is possible now. When Yetis were a thing before, it was like, okay, great. Ancient Yeti, and then you have, and I don't know why I keep forgetting the name of this Yeti, Enraged Yeti. Great, seems good. Lots of tempo, right? You have this in your first hand. You play Trapper, and then you have an Enraged Yeti, and then, I don't know, you get down like a 3 5/5s by turn 5. Maybe even 4, depending on, what your draws are. So that seemed like an okay strategy. The problem was 3 or 4 actually wasn't enough. Like, this deck actually wants to have 6 wide 5/5 Yetis. And now that it can do that on a more reliable basis with this card, it's doing a lot better competitively. So very much love this card. It does also shuffle copy in, like I mentioned before. Incisive Tactician, though, this is the face of the deck, baby. This did not need a nerf, I don't think. With this deck anyways. Like, if this was a 4/5, I'd still play this card. This card is amazing. However, I do think it deserved a nerf. Or sorry, a buff. Because there's no reason why it costs this much and can't trade with basically your average 5-drop. But this, I mean, when it's at Reputation, which this deck is pretty much generally triggering Reputation by turn 6. Or sorry, by turn 8. When this costs 6 on turn 8, you can get this down, and then also something like an Icevale Archer or a Black Rose Spy after you've already attacked. And if it's on turn 10 or something like that, you can set up an Ash Lethal very, very easy. Especially if you're somehow attacking twice with an Ash with the rally effect here. So, and generally speaking, you're attacking with 3 or 4 or 5 5/5s, and you're going to do a really good job rallying is going to do a really good job of ending the game. So, last but not least, Black Rose Spy, honorable mention. I'm not crazy about her. She is good as a one-of because you're not drawing her all the time. I know it's like, hey, you're playing a card and I'm happy I don't draw it. But, I mean, there's already so many draws like Ancient Yeti and Abominable Guardian that feel bad at certain points of the game that I feel like adding more Black Rose Spy would probably not do the deck justice. So, something just to take into consideration. But she can do work, obviously, when attacking with LeBlanc or getting a copy of just extra Yetis and stuff like that. And I actually didn't even mention LeBlanc. I'll get into LeBlanc in the gameplay. You guys know what she does. But her level 2 actually is more useful in this deck of most of the other decks I've played LeBlanc in. So, all right, let's get into the game. Lurkers versus Yetis. Let's go. All right, everybody. We are into the gameplay with Lurk and Yetis. God, it's not something I thought I'd say, especially with Lurk being a brand new archetype. So, mulligan. All right, we got the mulligan. That bad boy right there, Avarosian Trapper. You are always going to be wanting to keep him in your first hand. Never send him back into the deck. An amazing 3-drop. If you can find LeBlanc, that's going to work well, too. Yeti Yearling is, I mean, keep it if you have it generally on turn 1. Yeti Yearling is really an enabler for the nut straws, right? So that and Tall Tales. It's kind of why they're in the deck. They add, well, Yeti Yearling adds the consistency a little bit. Tall Tales purely just for kind of a nut draw situation. But if you're able to get 2 Yeti Yearlings down and you have these abominable dudes coming out, you're going to have a really quick wide board of 5/5s. And you can see the second abominable snow. He's being called Abominable Snowman because there's literally no reason why that's not called Abominable Snowman. I'm pretty sure it's Guardian. But yeah, it's really for nut straws. Iceveil Archer, on the flip side, is kind of awkward early game, except in a situation like this. So this actually feels decent to stave off a lot of early aggression from this Lurk deck. Because let's be honest, in this matchup, I think there was something floating around Twitter like how to know who's the aggro deck or whatever. It was like an old Magic the Gathering article. You are not the aggressor in this matchup, at least not to start anyways. We need to stave off early aggression. We need to make it to a turn where we can actually get these abominable snowmans down and start doing some work. Honestly, not gonna lie, this hand is a perfect example of not the nuts hand. It's actually not that great. We did have the Trapper, we did have LeBlanc, so that feels okay. Feels bad that she's already got vulnerable on her, so she's gonna get picked off real soon. If this Lurk deck did not have that vulnerable, she would probably stick around for quite some time. There's only Bone Skewer and what is it? Something from below. Jesus, what the heck is Pike's spell again? Death from below. That you really have to worry about in this matchup. So if they didn't get vulnerable, she would have stuck around for a while, probably done a lot of damage. But she is nice, and I think we're going to see us actually save her in a second. Yeah, with the Elixir of Iron. So the reason I'm doing this is because she's going to get possibly, at best, 2 more trades on units, and at worst, 1 more trade. So essentially, that Elixir of Iron is allowing me to kill a unit on board. So it was less about saving the LeBlanc and more about getting the trade onto the unit. Not to mention, it's another reputation strike, which is really nice. So that's kind of why we need to do that there, turning that Elixir of Iron into a, deal 5 damage. Feels good, right? So now we do finally get the Trapper down, and this is where you can start to see, too, the Yetis coming online, right? We have the other Ancient Yeti in hand. It's a little bit expensive right now, but we will be able to get it down. Once we do, these other abominable dudes are going to be coming out here in a second. Unfortunately, too, this LeBlanc couldn't attack because of the 4/6, which feels bad, man. Definitely ain't going to be saving her now, though. I'm pretty sure she's dead. She's dunzos. So the question now is, you guys, you got it. When you're playing this deck, you have to be aware of what your opponent has for removal and how many Yetis you have on board. Especially early, if you're trying to rely on a Yeti Yearling and a Trapper or something like that, or even 2 Yeti Yearlings. They only have 2 health, the Yearlings, so if your opponent, they're playing P&Z, they can Mystic Shot it. It's going to prevent a Tall Tales, it's going to prevent the abominable dudes from coming out, so you got to pay attention to that. And same goes here, right? We need to be aware of how much damage these Yetis are going to take and keeping them around. Because if we don't keep both of these Yetis on board here, it's actually huge. Like, this actually wins us the game, keeping these 2 Yetis around. So lucky enough, both of these Lurk units are only at 4 attack right now, which is nice. So we are able to block both if we want. Plus, we have the Elixir of Iron on backup to save something else. So things are looking okay because we know it's looking like we're going to keep them. If our opponent had Bone Skewer, honestly, it'd probably be game over. I would be, I don't know, maybe not, because all right, remember too, the abominable dude, he's got a play effect, which I've actually yet to use the play effect, I'll be quite honest with you, which is draw a Yeti, which means, there's got to be plenty of enraged Yetis in there, so you probably get a 1-mana 1. And honestly, now that we're reaching turns 8 and 9, although we won't get them out for free, we don't have crazy value in our hand, so we probably could just go turn 8, draw Enraged Yeti, turn 9, play it, draw another Enraged Yeti, and then play one, and then the next turn play another one. So you're still going to fill your board quite quickly over the next couple of turns, even if these 2 Yetis didn't stick around. So now, it does still behoove you to keep them around. I'm just saying, just think about different, next couple of turns with keeping these Yetis around. But this is going to allow us to go into the next turn with a very big board and another LeBlanc, which means we're talking about mirror image earlier. Yeah. Actually, we didn't. I forgot to talk about LeBlanc. So now we're going to talk about LeBlanc. So LeBlanc, one of the things that always got me a little annoyed with LeBlanc level 2 was her level 2 mirror image, or just level 2 in general, didn't seem as impactful as other level 2s, right? So sure, she's a 6-3 quick attack, feels pretty good. It's a pretty good beat stick. Sure, it's actually not crazy hard to get a mirror image, but for how hard it is, it doesn't seem like it's worth the payoff. With this deck, it's actually incredibly easy to get a mirror image. So it feels a little bit more impactful. I want to use her in some more Legion Marauders deck. Just don't pay attention to me, random thought. So anyways, I love Legion Marauders for the same reason I love Yetis, to be honest with you. So yeah, so we're gonna get one here, and it actually is pretty crucial into winning this game. You'll see in a second. But I do very much like LeBlanc, and LeBlanc and Ashe both kind of lend themselves to a finisher later on in the game, right? So Ashe speaks for herself. You have Frostbite alongside Ashe with a big board of Yetis. That's 20 damage to the face. LeBlanc, maybe not 20 damage. She's probably not as effective as Ashe in that regard into ending the game, but she does allow you to keep up in value with some of the more late game decks by getting those mirror images. So your opponent is kind of forced to deal with her if they can. And if you do have in those late game decks, you probably got to try Farron Assessor off or something by then. You could probably have her stick around with Troll Chance and Elixir of Iron and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. But she's definitely better than some of the other decks that I played her in before. Now, this mirror image wins us the game. Joe, actually, fun fact, when you play against Lurk, because I already screwed this up a few times, you need to take into account the boost from the Lurk. All right? You need to take into account. Just assume there's a Lurker on the top of the deck. There might not be, but assume there is. So these would both theoretically be 7 attack. If I didn't play that mirror image, that means I'm blocking on the open with a 6-3 and a 5-5. That's 2 plus 4 is 6. I can do math, I swear. Did I do that right? I did that right. I actually did that right. So, and if there happened to be a Rek'Sai at the top of the deck, God forbid, that would have been way more than that. And I think I would have been 8 and 8, so I would have had 2 5-5s. That actually would have been, if there was a Rek'Sai, there's nothing I can do about that. There would have been 6 overwhelm damage coming through. So a little bit of good luck there. So that's good. Also, at this point in the game, you usually have Trifarron Assessor. So that's kind of where, if this were a late game deck, that's kind of what you want and what you're digging for to stay in the game. You plop down an Assessor here, you're getting 4 draws. That's gonna feel kind of good, right? It's very nice. It's very nice. So super fun deck. Taking home the win here against Lurk. Definitely give it a shot, and you won't regret it. Alright guys, that's it. Again, deck in the description, the code, the link to Mobalytics will also be there as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm usually the most active with Runeterra content. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Oh, the OLS link will also be in the description too. So we will be casting it this weekend, myself alongside Boulevard. It is on Sunday and Saturday. So we will actually be casting on the 4th of July. And a lot of people recognize the 5th this year because it falls on Sunday or whatever. But I don't know. Anyways, with that said, everybody stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you. And peace out.